Are you looking for the ultimate source of inspiration, knowledge, and entertainment? Look no further. Network Kingdom is a unique platform that brings together experts from various industries. Through networking and collaboration, we create inspiring conversations that educate, entertain, and motivate our listeners. Whether you're a business professional, an entrepreneur, or simply someone looking to grow their knowledge base.
Hello, people. It's me again, Conversations with NetworKingdom. And I am so glad to have my mentor, my tutor, the inspiration to this particular podcast, Dr. Ivan Misner. He needs no introduction. Everyone knows that he's the father of modern day networking, has been that, and is always going to be that. It's so nice to have you here today, Dr. Ivan Misner.
It is fantastic to be here, and I love the technology that exists today where you and I on different continents can have a conversation. It's just amazing. You know, when I started BNI back in 1985, and excuse me a little bit, I actually have COVID right now. So I may cough a little bit in between our conversation, but I'll mute. But what's amazing to me is that when I started BNI, the internet didn't exist. So the second most expensive item in my budget was the telephone bill.
I can imagine.
The phone bill was crazy expensive back.
And there were no special packages.
Yeah, I had an 800 number, and I did some special, pricing so that it wasn't too terribly bad. But staffing was number one. Number two was the phone bill. So to be able to have the technology that exists today, for us to have conversations like this virtually free, and then share it with the world is just amazing to me. Just absolutely amazing. So I'm really happy to be here.
I didn't know BNI way back then, but even from when I knew BNI, I can't even begin to comprehend when we moved from the slips to BNI Connect. I thought that was phenomenal. Yeah. And then now we moved to Zoom, and it was a lifesaver during the lockdown because
it was.
From morning till night at different times of the day, I attended meetings in virtually everywhere in the world. There was a BNI.
Could you imagine, Omu? Could you imagine if COVID had hit the world in 1990 instead of 2020?
You know, that has never crossed my mind, but that would have been a disaster.
Oh, it would have been, as bad as things were, it would have been exponentially worse had it happened in 1990, because there was no technology to allow us to do the kinds of things that we were able to do. When COVID hit, as you know, BNI transitioned from 10,000 in-person meetings every week to 10,000 online meetings every week.
And I'm quick to add that BNI was probably one of the first to transition.
Yeah,
even
people thought we were crazy.
Yes,
they thought
people were still
crazy.
debating, and people were still wondering why you exaggerating. Yeah. And we had
they were mad. They were mad. So I think two things happened. One was I wrote an article that you can still find. It's up on entrepreneur.com. I wrote an article in 2018 that said the future of face-to-face is online. Now, when I wrote that article, BNI members and directors were like, no, don't say that. That's horrible. And I heard some people saying, Ivan's getting a little old, he's not, he doesn't know what's going on. And so I heard all of this, but I was like, no, the technology is changing so rapidly. 3D, mixed reality, holographic imaging is changing.
It's changing now with the new AI. The new AI is even worse.
But now AI, exactly. So I wrote that in 2018. Now in 2020, I didn't see COVID coming, but it was my CEO. Graham Weinmiller. Man, he was looking at a crystal ball because he spoke to me in January of 2020 and he said, this is going to be big. And I remember saying to him, yeah, it's another virus. It's no big deal. Wow, was I wrong? He transitioned China for BNI in January of 2020, January. And then he transitioned Italy in early February, and then the rest of Europe. And then we transitioned the entire world, almost 10,000 chapters went to online. It saved hundreds of thousands of businesses.
Oh, yes.
Us going online and helping people survive. I mean, BNI was a beacon of hope in a sea of fear at that time, as your network should be. It should be a beacon of hope.
And not only did it save, a lot of businesses grew. A lot of businesses grew. A lot of businesses found other means of making income that has turned out to be fantastic. I've spoken to, I actually did a one-to-one with a BNI member I had met during lockdown in South Africa. And I did another one-to-one with him yesterday. And he had transitioned during the lockdown with his mentor in BNI, and he's doing absolutely well now. Yeah. So yeah, we had a number of people that transitioned their businesses, at least on an interim basis. I know in California, we had a furniture reupholstery shop that had to let go of all of her employees. And someone said to her, and this is in about early March of 2020, they said, you have a lot of cloth, don't you? Now, if you think back, I mean, I don't know what it was like in Africa, but in the United States, we had no masks. You know, we ran out of masks quickly. Oh, yes, we did here too. Yeah. So someone said to her, you have a lot of cloth, don't you? And she said, I literally have a warehouse full of cloth. And they said, have you thought about becoming a COVID mask manufacturing business? And she said, no, I hadn't thought of that. And so she made 100 masks and she gave 2 to 50 people, her BNI members and some friends. And she gave 2 to 50 people with her business card. And she said, one is a gift for you. The second, I would really appreciate if you would take to a doctor, to a nurse, to a hospital, to a senior center. Wow. And give them the mask with my business card and tell them that I can make masks very quickly. She was bombarded with requests to make masks. She was able to hire back every single one of her employees. Oh, and wow. She physically distanced them. And it was a furniture reupholstery shop that became a mask manufacturing business. And that happened because 2 BNI members got together on Zoom and had a conversation about what's possible. And that's the beauty of a network. I'm sharing this in our next meeting during the education corner. That's so amazing. I mean, when you hear stories like that, it makes you feel really good. Yeah, you know, it's very easy to get caught up in the negativity that is going on in the world and the problems that we have. But the truth is that, you know, if all you do is focus on problems, you become an expert at problems. Yes. But if you focus on solutions, you can become an expert on solutions. Now, I watched BNI members focus on solutions all around the world. Yes. Yes. And I am so proud of this organization. We grew during COVID. Oh, so yes. BNI has 38 years of consecutive growth, year on year on year. There are very few organizations in the world that can say they grew 38 years in a row. Oh, yeah. And, you know, I've during the lockdown, I made so many friends and we have become really close. The last time I was in America, I visited some of them and you'd think we'd known each other for years. And forever, yeah. And that was our first time of meeting ourselves in person. So have you ever seen the TV series called Cheers? Just one. Yeah, okay, so it's about a bar, right? And, yeah. And the song is, you know, it's where everybody knows your name. Yes. And BNI is a little like Cheers.
wherever you go in the world, it's like everybody knows your name because you're a BNI. They may not know your name, but they know who you are. They know where you're coming from. We have a shared culture. And so my experience has been that wherever I go, whether it's Africa or Europe, Asia, North America, South America, I feel like everyone, I mean, not only knows my name, but they know the culture of the kind of organization that I've created.
Yes, I'll share a story with you. I was going to Kenya and I was going for work and I didn't know anyone. And I had a Kenyan friend, but who didn't live in Kenya. So she said, okay, I'll create a WhatsApp group with 3 or 4 of my friends in Kenya and ask them to take you around and, look after you. And she created the group, introduced me, and I noticed that for 2 days, they didn't say any word, they didn't say anything. And I just went on with my trip. And while I was at the airport, one of them wrote in the group, oh, I just checked her out. She's in BNI. That's fine. And I was like, excuse me. And then I got to Kenya. They picked me from the airport. I attended one of their chapter meetings. And they said to me that when I was introduced to them, they were not sure. And they didn't want to ask me. But they also didn't feel safe. So they went online and started, checking out my name. And as soon as they found out I was in BNI, they just felt better.
Yeah, it makes a difference. I mean, we have 300,000 people now, almost 300,000 people now, all around the world. And the key is that we do have this shared culture, this idea of giver's gain, this concept that if I help you, you'll help me. We'll all do better as a result of it.
Okay, so one of my worries when the world went online, I have always worked online. So I didn't even feel the lockdown because it was my natural state working from home. But that's not the same for most people. Right. And I like to say the world has become a global village. So
absolutely.
Even if you weren't working internationally, something always takes you international now. And on Zoom, you never know. So my worry then was, how do I communicate effectively? Because prior to COVID, any training that you did or anywhere you talked about communication, we always just assumed it was an in-person kind of communication. We never got trained about communication via Zoom. So they would tell you about body language, eye contact, posture and things like that. Now, how does it translate now that we're meeting virtually? How can we network effectively virtually?
Yeah, so we're in the early days of the technology, and so you talk about body language. You can tell some body language right here with this kind of technology. You can see my expressions. You can see, what's often called the eyebrow test. When you're talking and you get somebody's attention, your eyebrows go up. You can see that, or when their eyebrows go down. Okay, confused them. There are things that you can do online to connect with people. I can lean in and I can talk to you about something. And sometimes if you
I've never done that.
Lean in. Yeah, as you're talking, if you want to get people's attention, you're talking to them like this, and then you go, okay, listen to this. This is incredible. And then, so there are things that you can do that you may or may not do. Well, you might do it face to face, but you don't think about it online. The thing is that the technology truly is changing. I've seen holographic technology that is in the works by companies like Microsoft and others. Omu, it's amazing. I mean, amazing. It is like you are sitting in the room with a person. It's like, you remember Star Wars and the Jedi Knights, where in the movie, you got a couple of real
Mhm.
Jedis, and then there's a holographic image, and then there's a real Jedi and a couple of
Yes.
holographic images. I mean, it's like that. You can
Yes.
see if they make a movement, if they cross their legs, you can see all of that. By the way, when we get there, when we get to that point in
Wow.
BNI, I want to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was one of the Jedi Knights. I want to be Obi-Wan. So I think that is the future of networking right now. So as you know, during COVID, 100% of our networking groups transitioned to online. Now that COVID is, mostly past us, at least the serious stuff. Although I just caught COVID 4 or 5 days ago. So I've gone 3 years without catching it. I caught it 5 days
Is
ago.
this your first?
Yeah, it's the first time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I managed to go 3 years without getting it. And I got it 6 days ago. So
You weren't going to escape.
what's that?
You weren't going to escape.
No, I don't think any of us are going to escape eventually. I think we're going to all catch it, but it's just not I was vaccinated, so I had 2 days that were like a really bad cold, and then the last 3 or 4 days have been like this. I mean,
Okay.
It's been okay. I have a little bit of a cough, but anyway, I think the future is going to be more and more kind of this kind of thing where you're having online connections and conversations. Now, we went from 100% in person to 100% online. Now, I don't know if you know these numbers, but now BNI, our network, and I think this has relevance to anyone who's listening to this, whether they're in BNI or not.
Yes.
68% of the organization has gone back to in person.
Yes. I read that.
16% has stayed online. As a matter of fact, there are many chapters throughout the world that have never met in person. They're online and have been online. And another 16% are hybrid, which means that they meet one time a month in person, and then the rest of the month they meet online. I like that.
That's what my chapter does. We do one meeting a month in person and then hybrid. And it's funny because
that's the future, Omu. I think that's the future.
But I honestly thought that I was going to enjoy online. And I did initially. And I was one of those who kicked against it eventually. I was like, listen, nothing beats an in-person meeting.
No, in person's better. I would so much rather see you in person, shake your hand,
There's
give
some
you a
connection.
hug, look at you in your three-dimensional eyes.
It's a different kind of connection.
Yeah, it is. And there are advantages to online. One of the advantages is I don't have to fly to Africa. You don't have to fly to Austin, Texas.
Exactly.
That's a pretty big advantage.
And
the other advantage is I can put a shirt on and I might be wearing sweatpants below.
Absolutely.
I won't say, but I might be wearing sweatpants below. You don't know. So, there are advantages to online, and there are good advantages to meeting in person. And so I love the combination. I think that's the next step.
It actually did help us in Lagos particularly, because the traffic is bad.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people, getting to the meeting venues in the morning was a bit of a hassle.
Yeah.
So now, once they realized they didn't have to go through that hassle, they were ready to join. So that's an advantage of it being online.
Yeah, I think it's we have to be open-minded. Too many companies, and this is advice for everyone. Too many companies have been disrupted, oftentimes because of technology. Companies like Kodak, the film company.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, Omu, but Kodak invented the digital camera.
Oh, they did?
They invented it. They owned the patent on the digital camera.
Wow.
And the executives decided not to sell digital cameras. Instead, they decided to license the rights to other people. And there's actually a memo that exists of a senior executive VP from Kodak who said, no, we don't want to promote the digital camera. Besides, who's ever going to look at photographs on a computer? They said that.
Wow.
And look what happened to Kodak. They went bankrupt.
Yeah.
Kodak could have been Apple.
I know.
Now, Apple, you think, well, no, they couldn't be Apple. Apple's a computer company. No, yeah, it was a computer company, not a telephone company.
Mm-hmm.
But the Apple phone has become the most popular camera in the world.
Yeah. I mean, they use it for virtually everything.
Yes. Kodak could have easily been Apple if they had decided, you know what, let's pursue this digital camera thing because that's the future. So I have always felt like, particularly as the founder of BNI, I want to lead the disruption. I don't want to be disrupted. And so if you're in business and you're listening or watching this interview, you want to lead the disruption. You don't want to be disrupted. So you want to look at what's going on, what's happening in your industry. And you want to be on the leading edge. You don't want to necessarily be out. You don't want to necessarily be out in front because you never know where it's going to go. But you want to be near the leading edge.
Yeah.
Because when things change dramatically, you're going to get disrupted. And that's the way of the world. The world is just full of disruption these days.
It will slowly keep changing. Yeah. And evolving. Wow. So I want to talk about a few of your books. I'm going to talk about my favorite book last.
Okay. I'm ready.
So there's a networking, the networking effects of communicator.
The networking disconnect, is that what you're talking about?
The networking disconnect.
Yeah.
And actually I'll tell you my two favorite topics, and they've absolutely changed my life. So the networking disconnect and networking up.
Networking up. Well, I haven't done a book on that. I've written articles on it.
Yes, you've done
I love that concept. I'm not sure
up.
I have enough to do a whole book, but I have a lot of good content.
Networking up, you have enough to do a book because I've read so much about it. And it actually, so networking up, for those who are listening, is actually one of the reasons why I can afford to be here. Is actually one of the things that gave me the guts to be here. And after I learned about networking up, at the time I learned about it the first time, I was just the education coordinator. And I remember that immediately I saw it, I trained on it at the next meeting. And you know how something just sticks in your head. And I made it because it was me. I was that one person that would walk into somewhere and just gravitate towards the most convenient place or the most comfortable person or the person I felt I could either be above or who would be on the same level with me. I would build a shield around every other person and all that. But after I learned about networking up, it gave me the guts to actually do that. I don't know if you want to speak into that a little so I can tap some.
So I mean, you've given me a good suggestion, and maybe I should write a book on this. I haven't done a book. I've got a really good article and a presentation that I do on networking up. I could probably turn it into a small book. Networking up is about connecting in a meaningful way, in a memorable way, with those who are at a higher level of success or influence than you have. And that's based on your own judgment. I mean, it's based on your judgment. If you think someone is more successful than you are in some way, it might be based on money. It might be based on fame. It might be based on their ability to connect with people. They're just way better at it than I am or than you are. So you're networking with somebody who you perceive to be better able to do something than you are. And I call it networking above your weight class. You know, it's like in boxing, you have a weight class.
Yes.
and in wrestling, you have a weight class. And if you're wrestling above your weight class, you're wrestling or boxing with somebody who's bigger than you. So it's the same concept. And so in networking up, you want to really understand a handful of things. So you want me to share some of those things with you?
Yes, please.
So first is, there's generally, I think this is a great concept to understand. There's generally plenty of room at the top. It's the bottom that's really crowded.
Yeah.
So, go into it understanding that there's space for you. There is space for you. It's okay to network up. And that you want to recognize that there are a number of things that you don't want to do and that you do want to do when networking with people. And I've learned this the hard way. I've done really stupid things.
Thank you. You learned it the hard way, and then you made it easier for us.
Well, that's my goal. Because I've done really stupid things networking up. The first and foremost, this is the most important thing, and I was guilty of it. So it's not like I'm saying don't you do it. It's like don't do it because I've done it. It's dumb. It doesn't work. When you're networking up, and this is so difficult for people, don't sell to them. It's like you meet somebody who's more successful than you and you think, I'll never have a chance to ever see this person again. I got to take my opportunity and I got to sell to them. You know the expression, Omu, it's a pretty common expression. It never hurts to ask.
Yeah.
That's wrong. It's totally wrong. Okay, you see how I'm leaning in for Zoom? That's wrong. It's totally wrong. It's wrong because if I ask you for a favor before there's any kind of relationship, I'm asking too early. And so, in fact, it does hurt to ask before there's any kind of connection.
Yeah.
Especially if you're networking up. If you're networking with somebody who's really, really successful, you got to understand everybody and their mother is asking them for something. They're trying to sell them something.
Everybody and their mother beats.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're all asking for something. And the person who's successful is constantly bombarded with sales requests. Don't be one of those people. And so the first thing is don't sell to them, which I know is counterintuitive, but it's very, very true. So one of the first things you want to do is if you're going to be networking up, if you're going to network with somebody who's really successful, Google them, find out what they're doing. And you don't even have to do it in advance. If I know I'm going someplace where I know somebody very successful is going to be, I'll Google them in advance. But look, I've stood in the corner of a room and Googled somebody on my phone.
You're kidding.
Oh, yeah. I want to figure out who is this person I'm about to talk to. So you Google them to start up a conversation. And then it's okay. Now you have to walk up and talk to them. The next thing is embrace discomfort. If you're a little bit uncomfortable talking to that person, then you're doing the right thing. That's networking up. Embrace the discomfort. The next thing is, and this one's so, I think, incredibly important, is find overlapping context. Okay. Well, let me give you one thing before then. Don't be a sycophant. Don't puppy dog lick them to death.
Yeah, they can sense it.
Good to meet you. Don't do that. It's okay. You meet somebody that you really respect. You're networking up. It's okay to say, I love your work. It's really made a change in my life. I appreciate it. But don't puppy dog lick them. All right. And then understand the context. So if you could strike up a conversation with that person within the context of the meeting, then you make a connection with that person.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could spend a lot of time talking about this, but context is
I'm
key.
enjoying every minute. You're actually speaking to me.
Am I? Okay, good. So find out what they're interested in, and that's the context, and then see if you can help them in some way. When they tell you something that's going on, okay, I'll give you a quick story. I'm headed back to Necker Island next month, which is Richard Branson's island.
Yes.
And I've met Branson many times. Amazing man, wonderful person. A lot of humility. I really like the guy. And I wanted to do a video blog with him a couple times, but I didn't want to be one of those guys to puppy dog lick him. Hey Richard, would you do a video with me? I didn't want to do that. So I said to him, I Googled what he was doing. What are you up to? That's what I was looking at. And one of it, I found out the issues on the 2 videos that I've done with him. I found out what he was working on. And I said, hey, Richard, tell me more about this. Oh, and he lit up. Omu, he lit up.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, yeah, I'm doing this and that. I love this. And then I said to him, wow, that's amazing. How can I help you to promote that? And he said, well, I don't know. You've got this network. Maybe you can tell your network. And I said, oh, would you like to do a video where I could promote it to my network? And he said, yeah, that sounds great. And we did the video. We've done it twice on my visits to him. But if I went to him and I said, hey, Richard, would you do a video with me, please? Who knows what he would have said. He's a nice guy. He'd have probably said yes reluctantly. But here he said yes excitedly.
Yeah, and it's mutually beneficial.
Absolutely, mutually beneficial. I promoted his concept, his idea. In one case, it was one of his books. I promoted it. I was happy to do it. And hey, pretty good for me too to have Richard on my blog. So
Awesome.
That's about networking up, is you find the context that is relevant to the person that you're networking up with, and then ask them how you can help them. And if there's any way you can help them, then do it. That's way better than trying to sell them.
Yeah. That's one thing I learned from BNI that has honestly helped me. Because prior to BNI, you always felt that networking was about attending events, exchanging call cards, and just selling yourself. And it was like a room full of hunters, and that BNI was opened my eyes to the proper way to network. So that's very good.
Yeah.
And
all right, Omu, you've given me the idea of doing a little book on the topic, so I might.
We're definitely going to do it. I'm looking out for it.
All right, I'll be giving some thought to it. Seriously.
Yeah, honestly, and I mean, it's one of those. It's an amazing concept that has been very helpful, and there are a lot of misconceptions around it. And like you said, when you meet someone who you think is more influential, or who you think can actually turn your life around. And it's like me meeting Barack Obama and you're saying I shouldn't, and I think he's going to, and I need, let's say, visa or something like that. And all he needs to do is pick up the phone. And you're saying to me, I shouldn't ask, I should, So we need to.
Well, it's okay to ask once you have the relationship.
Yes, absolutely. No, that's what I'm saying. So if I didn't know the networking up concept, I probably would have gotten that mindset of, oh, I don't know when next I'm going to see him. Yeah. But when you
believe me, I did the same thing. I was guilty of that, so I'm with you. I feel
when you follow the concept, what happens is you've built a relationship that is going to last so long, and you're going to reap several times over.
Yeah. So I mean, I've known Branson now for 15 years, and I think one of the reasons is that I didn't try to sell to him the first time I met him. I tried to help.
Awesome. So, I mean, for those that are not in BNI, I'm sure they've picked up a few things about networking. For those that are want to know more about it, there will be a link under the YouTube.
Do you want to
video.
talk about who's in your room at all? Because you said you loved that book.
Yeah, that's my final, so I'll say to you what Who's in Your Room did to me. Who's in Your Room came out at the peak of lockdown. And during the lockdown, I was very busy. I had no room for negative thoughts. I had no room for depression or anything like that. We actually formed a group of BNI people. We called ourselves the Global Riders, and we formed a WhatsApp group, and we were from different parts of the world. And what we did was, each time there was a meeting and you heard about the meeting, you post it in the group and we all go to the meeting. So, and it was so much fun, and we looked out for each other, and of course exchanged referrals, did collaborations in it. And then I read that Who's in Your Room. I don't know if you remember, you did a short video for me after I did the first mastermind. I did the mastermind, and the amount of lives that got changed. So for me, I happen to be one of those who always said to myself, oh, I can't be influenced by anyone. I can have anyone around me and it has nothing to do with my life. And reading Who's in Your Room actually made me start thinking. Just like I always thought I knew what my values were, I had never written it down until I read Who's in Your Room. And I had never really realized that some of the values that I thought I had were actually still aspirational values. Until I started asking myself the questions. And I found out that for every time I train using anything around Who's in Your Room, and I use that values part, 90% of the people in that room have never written down their values.
No, they haven't.
And when we go,
if you ask somebody what their deal breakers are, what are the things they don't like?
Exactly,
they'll tell you
deal
right now.
breakers.
But if you ask them what are their values, they're like, I don't know. Honesty, great.
Exactly.
Give me some more. No.
And what 90% of them haven't written it down. And when you get them to write it down and we start to go through answering questions, you find out that 90% of the values are still aspirational.
Yeah. Listen, aspirational values are okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to say anything negative about them, but they're aspirational, which means, what are you living right now? If somebody were behind you with a video camera watching you behave, are you behaving towards those aspirational values? The older I get, Omu, the less I believe in words, and words are powerful. I believe in words, but the less I believe in words and the more I believe in behaviors, because you can have the best words ever, but it's the behaviors that really count. Do you behave in alignment with the words that you are saying?
Absolutely. And another way that I try to look at it and I explain to people is there's really nothing wrong in having aspirational values, as long as you know that they are aspirational. And then you begin to work out steps towards actually making them the values that you live presently.
Yeah.
So it's about clarity.
It is. And we all have aspirational values. I mean, one of my aspirational values is patience. I'm not a very patient person. Okay. I'm really not.
No,
I'm not.
No.
I mean, sometimes
but
I do not suffer. I do not suffer fools gladly. And sometimes I just want to go.
I mean, how do you run BNI with different cultures, different people, different character traits, and you tell me you're not patient?
Well, it's an aspirational value. I'm working towards it. I try to be better. So, I no longer run BNI.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, Graham Weimiller is the CEO. He runs it.
Yes.
I've always worked towards patience. It's not a natural behavior for me. And when I was 13 years old, you'll love this. When I was 13 years old, my mother gave me this paperweight. I'll read it to you. I'll tell you what it says. She gave me this paperweight. when I was 13. I was going to run for student council. And she said, honey, I love you, but you are a bull in a china shop. You're just nuts. And you have got to learn how to get along better with people. And it says, diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way.
Yeah, I've read it somewhere. You wrote it somewhere.
Yeah. She gave me this when I was 13. I'm 66 years old. Oh, I still have this. It's on my table.
Can you hold it up? I'm going to take a picture with it. Can you hold it up?
You take a picture of it.
Awesome.
All right. Diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way. She said, look, this is about collaboration, not manipulation. It's about learning how to work with people so that you can come up with something that works for everybody.
Yeah.
And that was great advice that my mother gave me as a young man. And I have strived most of my life to live that. It's not a natural behavior. I mean, you know, I'm just like, just do it. What's wrong with you? But you know, this is not leadership. That's assault. So, you know, leadership is about guiding and coaching people in the right direction. And so we all have aspirational values that we're working towards and that we have, but we're not maybe completely there. That's mine. That's mine that I have it. I'm not.
I wouldn't have guessed.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have guessed. Now, I have this curious question. When you started BNI, obviously you knew it was going to be a success. No. I didn't know it'd be a success. Okay.
No, listen, when I started BNI, I just wanted one group. I needed referrals. I was a management consultant. I wanted some referrals. I wanted to help my friends. I didn't plan on having two. And when somebody came to me and said, hey, you know, would you help me open up a second chapter? Because I can't join because we only take one person per profession. I actually told her no. I said, no, I'm a business consultant. I don't run a network. And she talked me into doing it and I did it. And then two people came who couldn't join because of a conflict in classification. And they both said, hey, would you help me open up a chapter? And I said, no, this isn't what I do. And so, you know, at the end of a year, we had 20 chapters. And it was at that point where I was like, okay, I've stumbled upon something that I didn't recognize. I mean, when I started BNI, I was 28 years old. And so I thought everybody had the referral thing worked out and they didn't. And I learned that. And it was at that point I had my Brody moment. Okay. Do you remember the movie Jaws?
Yes.
Towards the end of the movie, Sheriff Brody is throwing out chum into the ocean. And for the first time you really see the shark. It comes up, right? And Sheriff Brody turns around, he looks at the captain of the boat, and he says, you're going to need a bigger boat. It was in December of 1985 that it hit me when we had 20 chapters. Oh, I'm going to need a bigger boat. This is going to be way bigger than I ever anticipated. And it was about 11 months after I started BNI that I realized this is going to be huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you now put structures in place.
I did. That was the goal, was to create a plan, to create structures and systems and processes in place that were replicable so that other people could train on the same kind of content and achieve success. And, you know, we operate in 76 countries. So it has transcended cultural differences in the sense that it's an overlay on top of the culture. We're not trying to change culture. It's a system or a process that overlays on top of the existing culture, as opposed to trying to change the culture locally.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, I'm a proud BNI member any day.
I'm proud to have you as a BNI member.
And I was interviewing Mark Hansen yesterday, and I was saying to him that I feel like I've met you in person, so that I can't wait to be in Spain this year to meet you.
Well, I'm really glad we had this opportunity to do this interview, Omu. Thank you so much for inviting me to this. I really appreciate it.
So much. Thank you. Thanks. So guys, it's been a fantastic time we've had with Dr. Ivan Misner, the founder of BNI, the father of modern day networking. If you want to see his good-looking young face, then you want to watch on YouTube. Otherwise, you can download the podcast. Take care. See you guys next week.
You've been listening to Network Kingdom with Omu Obulor. Remember, if you cannot see where you're going, ask someone who has been there before.